per some of your requests, that letter from Dear Lucy to Santa about Santa is online. So some of you asked for a copy of that, so it's now posted also to the web, thanks to Andrea. And so if you would like a copy of that, it's there for you. And really, it's a good one. I have been reading your posts online, and I must admit, I'm almost ready to start over with my kids. There are so many fun ideas that you've posted. But I would probably become one of those who would be paranoid about not being able to do all of them, because, wow. So be careful as you read them. Truly, some of them are amazing. But don't get overwhelmed. If you have ones that you love already in your family, just stick with what you have. But if you feel like maybe your holidays need a perk, there's some good ideas. There are some really, really good ideas. So, and I don't know how many of you have read all of them, but some of you are very creative. Wow, and I am a very good copier. So this is the kind of stuff I like, is because I need somebody else's idea so that I can copy. And so I am truly, truly impressed. So how did your homework go? Homework was look at your traditions. That was one of the things. Conference, are you ready for conference? And did you read the talk from Elder Redlands on temple work? What was your take? What do you think? How did your week go? Maybe it has nothing to do with homework, but how did it go? How did it go? Anybody want to share some of their experiences? We can wait. I don't have a problem with that.
I read the talk. I'm just going to pull it up really fast. And I took away a little guilt from reading it, which I know was my decision to take that away. But it says, he quoted President Nelson, and he said, "We can be inspired all day long about temple and family history experiences others have had, but we must do something to actually experience the joy ourselves." And, I'm really good about going to the temple, but researching stuff for the temple hasn't been my forte quite yet. And but all the blessings that Elder Redland gave certainly do ignite the desire. I haven't done it yet, but the desire to get going on that and making sure that I'm reaping some of those blessings.
Awesome. I would invite you, Elder Bednar's words, to contact one of if you have a youth family history or family, get one of the youth. They are awesome. And you have them download onto your computer or your phone the app about Take a Name, and it just takes a few minutes for it to go through, well, depending on your line, what it's like. But all of a sudden, you have tons of ordinance work that you can do. And it is a magical, that's why I say, this is the time when the Lord's hastening his work through all this. I mean, we used to have to do don't worry about it, that you have to do all this long searching stuff that we used to have to do. I think that's what's intimidated a lot of people about doing it. There are apps now that just do it for you. And then you just print the cards and go. And it's exciting.
I help her family line, huh? We go to the temple together.
Awesome.
But I gotta work on my own.
Well, just get that app, and it'll be,
Okay.
it's exciting. It's called Take a Name. Take a Name, and it's an app you can put on your phone or your computer or whatever, and it comes through your, just your it's family search, but your regular LDS.org name and user name, and I mean, even I can do it, so you've got to know it's easy. It's really, really easy. Yes?
Our kids are old enough that they do almost all of our
Perfect!
temple work, but they had kind of dropped off for a little while for whatever reason, and I was trying to figure out how to motivate them. They're boys, so they're motivated by food. So I get their favorite kind of ice cream anytime they do family
and then do baptism and confirmation for them, and then they turn them over to you, and then it's your job to do initiatory and endowment sealings for them. But they find they're so fast at it, and it really gives them a sense of, and then if you really want to have a fabulous experience, extend that a little bit to take one of those names and find out the history. Learn about that person. Find out where they lived and what they did, and sometimes you can find some stories about them, particularly if they have to be, if they're prominent in church history. You can find some stories about them, and that really makes it exciting for them when that person comes alive. Yeah.
Since I have a group of people that know about the stake name, so I actually have the app and I pull it up, but then it says this is why I don't do anything. Because it says initiatory, endowment, and sealing has been done, but baptism and confirmation hasn't been done. And I know that that's not possible. So
Oh, it's possible.
why? I thought that couldn't happen.
So I just
I don't
want to say,
understand, so it's like that all down the theme.
when you take a name, you gotta be careful and just double check that they're not duplicates.
Right.
So that's the one thing, you don't just wanna just
Start printing
grab a
this
name,
stuff out.
but you do wanna go and make sure you're
How
not
do you do that?
duplicates. There's.
Pull it up and
See? This is what I know.
You go to your family search, you go to and then you go to that name, and then over to the side, if you scroll down to the side,
Okay.
it'll say possible duplicate, then you click on it, and it'll let you know if there's a possible duplicate, cause things like that just get
That's
messed up.
why you contact your family search person in your ward and help them, that consultant, and help them get you started on it. But to say that that has never happened,
I know it's down this list.
if you have a long list of them, I would definitely be checking into it. But to say that that's never happened,
Well, the Lord I know He'll fix.
He will fix it. But that's why I would highly recommend getting your family search person to sit down with you they come to your home and just say, one session, have them teach you the cliff notes about how to work it, family search for dummies kind of a thing. But then at least when you have a question, you can call them on the phone and you're at least talking the same language then. So they can help you, walk you through it and help you do it. But truly, it's a lot easier than it used to be, and these kids are the key. They're brilliant. They are brilliant, yes.
I love it because they know how to do it, our teenagers. I mean, we just kind of set a date and time, like, okay, we're going to the temple on this day, and so kids need to find the names. And so my 2 teenagers would find them, and our job is just to get them in the car into the temple. And it's such an amazing feeling just to see they know how to do it. 'Cause I have yet, I'm like, son, can you show me how to do this? And he's like, Mom, and he's so patient with me. But I mean, I love it that if you have older kids that just kind of like.
I feel very, very strongly, maybe it's because of my age, that I can say, kids, your job is the names, my job is I'll go and do it and, do the initiatory, do the endowment. That's my part. Your part is bring me the names. I used to feel guilty I wasn't doing the names, but then I heard how far the church is behind on getting endowments and initiatory done on names that have already been done, that you should not feel guilty or bad that you haven't taken a name. There is a backlog of names that those are people that need to be done as much as anyone else. So don't buy the guilt that if you're not finding your own name and taking it, that you're not doing the work. There's still mountains of work that needs to be done. And I'm not excusing you from finding your names, but don't sell yourself short in giving yourself credit. If you are regularly attending the temple and using the temple family names, don't feel bad at all about that, because that is still one more person that's been let out of prison. And to me, that's joyous. And when they meet you, that will be important to them that you were willing to do that. Anybody else? What are your plans for conference? Yes.
Oh.
No, whatever.
Has to do with the temple.
Good.
I have a friend who has a bunch of family meetings to do in Dallas for, and she's like, this will take me forever. And her birthday's coming up, and she like sent out an email and said, hey, I have some days, we're gonna vote on a day, and I'm gonna bring all my friends to the temple with me to do my family names, because I need them done faster.
Well, I hope you're coming on a Friday morning.
It might be, I don't know.
That would be lovely.
That would be lovely.
What a great idea to celebrate your birthday by doing names. You know, I did this app, and we pulled up names for initiatory and endowments, and we printed them off, and they had been baptized and confirmed in the Provo Temple just a couple of months ago, and I know exactly who did those, because my grandchildren are there in Provo, and they did them and then put them back into the, you know, and so I go on my line and find out those ones that they have been doing, and it was just so fun to be able to go, because I'm sure that it was them that had done the first part, and because it was on my line. It was exciting. Yes.
So I went and got journals because I love that idea for conference.
Awesome.
So, I'm gonna go to Washington with my son for his marching band, so we'll go for that. And then my husband, I said, you should go visit the girls, because my daughter just got married and I have 2 girls at college. And I said, you can take their journals and
Oh,
you can attend a conference with them. So I thought I would write a little note in each journal, give to the kids.
what a great idea.
I love that idea from you, so.
Yeah, particularly with their way to write the note. That's wonderful. That's a great idea. Great idea. There was another hand. Yes, yes, yes.
Say I had the problem with some of the people being sealed and the baptism were going on, they weren't new babies. So I called the church office, so this is a little known history fact. A few years ago, they decided to put the block in place where work had to be done in order, so they're trying to, catch up. But before that, work could be done in any order. Down there, because so many people were working on it, the lady said that they just let it happen. So, anyway, just side note.
Yeah, I mean, I check it, but don't feel like it's wrong. It's not always. Even in the temple, occasionally somebody will slip through, and so we work hard on keeping that not happening, but it does happen. Yes.
I just want to share something about the family history thing. My mother-in-law, she does a little, for all of us for Christmas, we always get a little folder, and it's about an ancestor. So the last one she did was about her parents, and she would write little stories and games that they would play, and she would put pictures of them when they were kids, and she would put this game that they used to play, Oh Heck, and Grandma always wore a hat whenever she played games, so she would put a little hat for us when we play games of that little game. And just those pictures and stories, and our kids, we'd sit down with our kids and tell them stories about grandma and grandpa, things that they did when they were younger, and they were so awesome, and the kids getting to know who they were, and every year we've always gotten a different ancestor or a great grandparent, or that was kind of a, I don't know if there's grandmas or if you guys have little stories of it, and that's what we would get every year, and she would ask us to sit and read them together. So some nights, family nights are, we just pull out the folder and we'll pick a story and talk about.
Oh, I'm liking that idea.
You can start a new tradition.
I think I'm going to start a new tradition. Andrew, jot that down for me, because I'll forget all the time. That is an awesome idea. I love that. I'm going to do that. I still have time before Christmas. Woo! Yes. Okay. Anyone else like to share an idea? Yes.
Well, I just kind of, the same excerpt that she just, kind of put in there. Our family we're all over the country, and literally even international because of marriages and stuff. But we do family newsletters twice a year so that we can all stay in touch with all the 4 generations that we have. And in our newsletters, when we publish them, we always do what we call a blast from the past. And we insert at the last page a story from one of the ancestors or the grandparents and a picture and that kind of same thing. And it's even been, it's been ancient, it's been like 4 or 5 generations past, but it's also been just like my parents when they were kids.
Hey, be careful when you say ancient.
But I mean, like, you know, some of them are go back like by
Yeah,
generations,
yeah.
and some are just like my parents, you know, when they were kids, and there's an insert in there from when my dad.
Who's in charge of it?
My grandmother and my grandma and grandpa started it, yeah, it's the web
Oh.
organization. So they started that, but it's really cool, so it's very similar, and they always put that in there, and so it's awesome, because twice a year I get my newsletter, and then in the back, we get to read about somebody, and it's pretty cool.
I like that. Yes, Holly.
It's not one that I do, but my mom does this, and I love it. She just started it. She wrote out, and she just hand wrote her life history and like a ton of stories from her youth. And I was surprised, first off, by like how little I knew about my mother until I read it. Like, I mean, I've heard plenty of stories, but she had so many, just any memory she could have. And what she's doing is she like bound it up, and she's giving a copy to each kid when they reach 8, like when they get baptized, and so that they will know like all of her stories. But it's an amazing book, and I think what I really was shocked at is I always think of family history as it has to be like farther up, you know? I was so shocked how much I didn't know about my mom.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and could I just encourage you to start writing down a few things? Because someday your kids will say, well, could you write your family history? And you're going, When you're my age, you can't remember all of it. It's kind of, You know, I don't remember when I was 5, so write down things you can remember now along the way.
So my mother-in-law is really good, and she does a weekly letter to her kids and those family members that aren't married or whatever, and puts what went on in her week, whether it's spiritual or whether it is just what happened in the week. And it's so nice to be able to get that information, since we don't live right by them, but we're able to feel still connected to them, because weekly we look forward to this letter
Awesome.
or email.
Yeah, great idea. That's a journaler. Yeah.
I do something with our son. Whenever we're going to lacrosse practice or whatever it is, we want to play on my phone. And so I said, well, you have to answer 3 questions. And so I say, what year was I born?
Good job.
1700s? He doesn't know. But after I ask him that question, 3 or 4 times, so now he knows how old when I was born. And then I'll ask him, where was your grandma born? And I messed with him years ago. I told him she was born in Canada. She was born in Idaho Falls. But they know that now too. But I just ask them little questions about when did I graduate high school? When did your mom graduate? How old's your mom? Things like that. So that they lock it in so they can play on my phone.
I think that is a great idea. Good motivation. They'll learn it. That's the key to get the phone. I think that's a great idea. I think that's a wonderful idea. Okay, who would like to say the closing prayer? I have to go home and do some of these things. Andrea.
One of the things that my mother-in-law did was one year for our family reunion, she did trading cards that were for a family. And so she had their picture on the front with their birth dates and death dates, and then she had information on the back. And she just mixed them all up and passed them out to all the kids, and so they had to try and collect their family. They had to gather their own family to have their own set. And then she added a new family every year, and so they're all by different color. So like her side was a certain color, and Grandpa's side was a different color, and so the kids could collect their trading cards. They were playing cards.
Oh, how fun.
They were really cute.
These are such, now see, I wish all of these were on the site, because my memory is so lousy. These are great ideas. Anyone want to share their preparation for conference? What they're doing to prepare for conference, either for yourself or for your children to have that experience. Anybody want to share their conference prep?
So we took the idea from the website and printed out the pictures just last night for Family Home Evening. And then printed out their names separate and played a little matching game to see if they could match up their picture with their name. And then we had their biographies. Just read a little bit of the biographies of the former 12 apostles, which was really good for me even, because there are so many new ones just in the past couple of years that it was neat to, and I told them I gave each of them a card to read. I said, now pick out 3 things or 2 or 3 things that you thought was interesting from that you can share with all of us. Peter Uchtdorf was a pilot, and that he was not a member, he was a convert to the church, just different things that they picked out. And last conference, our family was traveling, and we missed it. We were in Australia, actually, and it was just weird timing because they actually had just Easter Sunday that day.
Right.
And so we tried to plug it in the car. Anyway, it was really interesting talking to our kids last night about how excited they are that we're just gonna be home, just having our regular conference thing. Like, we have, they get a candy when they listen to a certain word or when a certain person speaks that they've chosen, like some of you have mentioned. But it was a testimony to me how much they're internalizing that. I don't think that they care about.
Yeah.
They're 10 and 12, the older ones, and 7, and I don't know, they really do love it, and they have gained an appreciation for it that I was able to see last night. It was neat.
That's awesome. That's great. I'm so excited I can, counting days. It'll be so fun to have this conference. I think there's gonna be some great things.
Two things. One, in talking to friends about conference preparation, one thing that she does with her kids that I really like and I want to do with mine. So before conference, she'll pick out 10 different words or themes, love, faith, Jesus Christ, temple. And so there'll be different bowls up at the front of the room with the words above each bowl, and then different snacks, different treats. And so then for children, when they hear those words, then they can go and get the corresponding treat. And I really like that because it kind of forces even little kids to listen. And, I've been mostly focusing on just keeping her in the room. So that, she's just kind of hearing it, but.
She's still really young though.
She is, she's 6, so, yeah. But I like that,
Yeah.
To kind of get kids trained to start wanting to listen and pick things out in conference. And the second thing, what I'm doing to prepare for conference is my big, desire is to be the kind of mother that my daughter needs me to be. So I'm kind of going in with that prayer in my heart
That question?
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, you'll get a lot of counsel and inspiration, I think, on that one. That's a great question.
So in years past, I've created like conference folders for my kids that have the different a piece of paper through the color on or different activities to do during it. But as they've gotten older, I've decided to put paper in it that tells about, have them write down the names of who's speaking and then pick out a few things of features of who's speaking, like what tie they're wearing or what color suit or, things, and then write down things that stand out from the talk. And then afterwards, I will ask them about that talk. And I think I shared this before, but when I ask the questions, then they earn conference bucks, and once they have a certain amount of conference bucks, they get to go to the conference buck table and pick out prizes from that. But it's interesting how it can transition from little ones to, as they get older, it can be more broad, or you can have more of an expectation of how they earn those conference bucks.
Encouraging them to actually listen and take something away from each of those talks. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Have them count the primary songs. How many primary songs the choir sings? They always sing a few in some of the sessions. Primary songs are fabulous. Anyone else want to share before we start today? All righty. Today is one, did I say it was one of my favorites? They're all my favorites. This is a really good one, though. If you remember the very first day when we introduced, a lot of people introduced themselves, and one of the universal problems that you find in raising children is contention. The children are fighting with each other. And so that becomes one of the first questions is, I have an 8-year-old and they're always fighting, and how do you get them to stop fighting? And usually what I am hearing, and maybe I'm not hearing correctly, but what I'm usually hearing in that question is, tell me something I can do right now to stop their fighting. What is the discipline, or what is the consequence that I put into effect so that they will stop fighting and bickering and quarreling and tattling and creating contention in our home because I don't like that spirit. And the answer is not that easy, but today is the day that we're going to actually discuss what do we do, what creates contention, what creates this fighting with each other, and how do we create an environment that discourages that kind of behavior. Because it's not a discipline. I mean, we do have to discipline. We'll talk about that. We have to discipline. But it's creating an environment that takes them out of wanting to contend with each other. Now, we live in a competitive world. Our world that we live in now, our social environment, is extremely competitive. Now, to offset that, you may say, in the schools here, we have, no one fails. You can take the test as many times as you want to, and just do it again, and no one fails. We're not competing. You can keep doing it, which is almost the other end of the spectrum. So we have the competition, which is not good, the way we compete so with each other, but taking them totally out kind of creates this I don't care incentive, the lackadaisical. Unless you have a very highly motivated student, they don't really care a lot. And for some, you'll say it's the competition that motivates them to want to be a good student, to look at everybody else and say, I'm better than, I got a higher grade. What was your grade? I got a higher grade. And so a lot of parents will say they like competition because it's motivating, and it motivates correct behavior. And I want to tell you that where in the moment it may seem motivating, it is not a good thing to use. Because anytime you're in competition, and you're using competition as a motivator for your family, anytime you use that, you create a winner, and they're going to move to be a winner, but you also, by default, create a loser. So where it may motivate the winner to be the winner, it discourages the loser because they are a public loser. And you'll find that in your family, with your children, because of their different personality cores, because of what they have, what they bring to this earth, the very nature of their core, you'll have some that are very focused and highly motivated. And they come that way. They come that way. And you will have some that come from the beginning and live in la la land. They're like these little butterflies that flit through life, and they're happy and they're pleasant, but they are so not focused. And so you just have both of these kinds. So if you have 4 children, one of them is going to be highly motivated, a doer, and one of them is going to be a butterfly. And so you'll say, okay, let's see who can get undressed first. And they flash off. Your highly motivated child, it will go straight to the bedroom, get their jammies on, and come straight back. Your butterfly will flit. And they'll go to the kitchen and get a drink of water, and they'll pat the dog, and they'll love him. They'll go to the bathroom and sing 12 nursery rhymes, and then they'll kind of go upstairs, and by that, everybody else is back in the family, and they're still on their way to getting undressed. But they're happy, and they're good, and they're not bad. I mean, they're just distracted. And so by using this, you'll say, well, I'm trying to motivate him to, get back here, to get going. Your motivated child will always be the winner, and your butterfly will always be the loser. Or most often. The percentages will be very high. So now you're starting to create in the family, if you use this, let's see who can get their jobs done first. Let's see who can get undressed first. Let's see who can whatever first. If you use this, thinking it motivates, you begin creating in your family a picture of this child being the winner and this child being the loser. And it's by default. I mean, you're not saying you're better, but just the way you set up the scenario, it comes out that this one's the winner and this one's the loser. And it has nothing to do with whether they're being good or bad. They're just acting on their core personalities. So do you see how you putting them in that kind of a situation put them into competition? Okay? Competition is going to be a word that we're going to use today. So you put them into competition. Now, competition is what creates dissension. It's inequality. As long as people feel equal. Now, don't mistake me. Equal does not mean same. Equal means, in my unique way, I feel as loved as you do in your unique way. So I will treat you, I'll treat my butterfly differently than I'm going to treat my highly motivated children. But in my love, they will both feel equally loved. Now, if I'm setting them up for win-lose, they don't feel equally loved. They feel like the one who always wins is loved more. And they feel like the one who always loses feels less loved. So it's competition that creates contention. When children feel like their value system is on an up and down plane, an up and down scale, then they feel like they have to be better than. In a competitive world, value is created on a scale of better than. If I'm smarter than you, if I am faster than you, if I am more obedient than you, then I am better and therefore more loved than you. Children tattle because they want to feel better than. I come and tell you what Johnny's doing wrong because I want you to see how good I am and how bad Johnny is, and I want you to fight the battle and go make Johnny be good because he's so bad. So if I can tattle enough, then I become the good guy. Now, let's get into real family. There's usually one that creates the trouble. You usually have a little imp in the family that likes to tease or likes to, push buttons, and 90% of the time, you know who caused the problem. But do you see how that just exacerbates this feeling of you're bad and you're good? I can tattle and Johnny's bad because he's always creating the problem and he's always the bad guy. And so he's going to be in trouble and he has to go to his room or he has to have time out or he has to. And woohoo, look how good I am. So do you see how this translates into self-esteem and value, the eternal value, the internal value that these people have? So as this happens, this competition for value, it creates contention. So now these two are going to start arguing with each other and fighting with each other and wanting to be right because we have created a value system that if you're right, you're good. Now, some of you have, because of the way you were raised, because of where you come from, have bought into that value system that you have to be right. You have to prove your rightness. So if you're in a discussion and somebody has a different opinion, you only win if you prove your rightness. Now think about discussions with your spouse. Can you just allow them to have a different opinion? You just chat about it. Or do you have to talk until you prove your rightness is right? And do you see where contention now is being born? It's very interesting that the Greek root for inequality is the same root for the word iniquity. So when you feel inequality, it creates competition. And competition, that leads to sin. In 4th Nephi, it talks about how there were no manner of ites, and they were at peace because everyone was equal. Now, that doesn't mean they were the same. It's not sameness. They believed that they had equal value, and they took care of each other. And those who had more gave more, and those who had less would give what they had. It's sort of like the law of consecration. But there were no ites. And so in our families, the goal is to create no ites, so that there is not sameness. Every child is individual, but they feel of equal worth. And when that happens, contention then stops. Because contention is, the core of that is this inequality that they feel. And so we need to feel like, or create this environment that makes them feel like, even though they're uniquely different, they're of equal value. So there's no ites in our home. Let me share with you another thing that just happens in homes, not intentionally, but let's say you have a dad who is an avid football fan. Avid football fan. Then you have one child, one son, who is a great football player. You know, he just got it from dad, and he's built, and he's quick, and he's good, and he's star of the football team. So now you're in high school, and there's the football games, and dad talks to this son about the upcoming football game. And who are they going to play? And who's the quarterback over there? And what is their stats? And what is their score? And who's the coach? And we're going to talk about all this stuff. And what's the plan for the game Friday night? And how are you? You know, you get it? I mean, you can feel. Now, Dad and him are talking all this stuff. Okay, son number 2 happens to really dislike sports and isn't necessarily built for sports, and happens to prefer music. So he's got a choir concert coming up. And Dad says, oh, what night is your choir concert? Friday night, 7? Okay, I think I can make it. I think I can do that. That's good. We'll be there. Which son do you think feels loved most? It's the football player. Now, Dad, if you said, Dad, which son do you love the most? He would say, I don't love either son more than one. I don't love one more than the other. I love them the same. But when you exude connection with one and not with another, do you see their uniqueness then is making them feel like there's inequality? Does that make sense? So even though you may not be as excited about the choir, you need to exude the same interest and questions and involvement and concerns so that they feel in their uniqueness they're not in competition. Now, you're doing it unconscious. I mean, it's not happening consciously. Like, I like you better. It just happens because of your own personal interests. And so you have to be aware of how you are interacting with each of your children. Because the reality is, not that you love one more than the other, but just that it comes across that way. Let me tell you another example. Those are family situations. This is one that happened in Ward. I have 2 grandsons who are relatively close in age, both of which are extremely good looking and very, very gifted and talented. They just happened to fall into this scenario. One was the fabulous athlete, football player, and the other one was fabulous in music. Very, very good, gifted in music. So they are at church one Sunday, and the young men's leader is standing there talking to both of them. They're both standing there talking to him. And a young lady walks up, who's darling, really cute, And so the young men's leader says to her, so-and-so, I won't mention any name, we'll call Mary. So Mary, so if you could date, you'll be turning 16 here in about 3 months, won't it be? And she says, yeah, it's about 3 months. She says, which one of these two would you rather go out with? A, the football player, or B, the choir boy? Which one of these two would you like to go out with? Do you see, now, the youth leader is simply trying to be humorous. You know, ha ha ha, this is funny. The boys are absolutely mortified. Absolutely mortified. And the girl is just put on the spot. That is a lose-lose situation. No one can win in that situation. And fortunately, the boys just sort of walked away, you know, left the situation, didn't make her have to decide, didn't make her have to come up with an answer, and they walked away. But the reason I share that is because sometimes when we're trying to be cute or funny, even with our own children, we create these win-lose situations, and some of the questions that we ask make it win-lose. And any time that you create win-lose, you've created some competition. So does that mean that we should never compete? Does that mean that competition is bad and we want to eliminate it from our homes? And the answer is yes and no. Isn't that fun? The answer is yes. We don't want our children competing with each other. We don't want that. But we do want them competing with their best self. So we want them to always be working to get better within themselves. So it's not, are you the best football player on the team, but did you play your best game? Do you think you could have played a better game? What could you have done? What were the good plays you had? Which ones do you think that you blew? How would you do it different? So it's not, boy, you carried that game. Yeah, they wouldn't have been able to make it without you today. No, it's not, you're the best player. It's how do you be the best you? And you can show that kind of interest no matter what activities they're involved in. And they need to learn to look to that as how can we be our best team if they're in a team sport? Or how can we be our best choir? Or how can we be our best drama group? What can I do to help make the group better? It's not to compare one another. So it's very interesting that this topic is found prominently in the scriptures. And the reason that we don't always acknowledge it and realize that it's there is because the Lord doesn't use competition as the word, but he uses the word pride. He uses the word pride. Whenever we are in pride, we are in competition. And yes?
Sorry, can I ask a question about how you're saying that you naturally connect with the ones that as a football player maybe a little more? I see that, you know, with different kids, I do connect better with them. We both like music, we both like this. So are you saying subdue some of that, or just, I don't know how to,
okay,
how to apply that to.
I can't tell you how to apply it. That may be a question you take to conference. Good conference question. But the first step is being aware. The first step as an adult, you know, is being aware of how is this attention being interpreted by my children. What are they seeing, not what am I feeling? See, we tend to just say, well, my intention is good, so they should receive it well. But they don't receive according to your intention. They receive according to their reality. And their reality has little to nothing to do with your intentions. So you can say, I'm intentionally interested in all of you. But if the non-musical child is saying, my reality is, you're always paying attention over there, then I am not convinced you don't love them more than me. Does that make sense? So I can't say, well, let me tell you what to do, but I am going to tell you what to do. But, because I think it's really individual. I mean, I'm going to give you some tools and some keys, but it's very individual because every child's individual. Both the one you think is that you're connecting with and the one that you struggle a little bit more to connect with. Their individuality is different in every family and every parent, and it's all different, but the principle is the same. So the principle is to create this equality in uniqueness, not making them the same, but equality in helping them feel equally loved and appreciated and wanted and important. And that comes, and as we succeed in doing that, we pull them out of competition. Okay? Now I'm going to talk to you about what this competition looks like so that you can see if it's in your home, to see if you're creating it, to see if it's there, and you can make your own evaluations. Yes?
I think that the take home would be that not to praise the one that we're interested, share interest with less, but to bring the our interest level of the others up to that level too. So you can share interest of music with your musical child, but the one who really loves to play video games, like maybe you can just ask about the favorite video game, like that is really cool, and just share, like, even if you have to fake it, like share an interest. My husband has to really fake it when he reads my son's essays, and my son is a really excellent writer, and I have to be like, Nick, look at what he's done. This is amazing. Read this, and it's hard for him to want to read an essay, but I kind of prepare him for it and bring that interest level up so that because he's all about the sports thing, but I'm like, look at what this child has written. It's amazing, and so
yeah.
Bring him up.
Part of what helps create this paradigm shift is to remember it's not a sport you're interested. I mean, you may be interested in sport, but that's not the focus of the interest. It's the child. So you may not be interested in essays, but you're interested in the child. Therefore, you're interested in the essay. Does that make sense? So it's the child in either case that you focus on. And if that's the focus, then your interest level should be equal because it's your child that you're focused on. Okay, your homework assignment this week, it's really, really quite simple this week. It's only 2-pronged, which is, well, that won't ever happen again. And the first one, of course, is take a question and listen to conference. That's number 1. But number 2 is what I'm passionate about this. I want you to look up, read, but not only read, and this may be archaic, so I'll try to say it in a way that's not quite so old-fashioned. Put it in whatever form you can get to quickly. Now, you may have digital files that you know how to use. Anything digitally for me is lost. And so for me, it's all hard copy. And if it's hard copy for you, then print it and get a hard copy. And what I want you to study, and we're going to talk about it a little bit now, and I hope it perks your interest enough that you'll study it and get it, is President Benson's talk, and it's called Beware of Pride. And it was given in April of 1989. I feel so strongly about this particular talk that I have it printed and actually taped in as the Book of Ezra. For Ezra Taft Benson. It's my Book of Ezra. And taped in my scriptures. And it is a mess in my scriptures. I mean, it's underlined, it's cross-referenced, it's because I feel so strongly that this is the core, and and we have the scriptures that say pride was the downfall of the Nephite nation. And the Lord warned in the Doctrine and Covenants his leaders about pride. So pride is the beginning and the end of falling, of us falling in our testimonies, in our families, in falling away from love. Pride is the factor. It started in the pre-existence. It started in the great council in heaven. It started when Satan, full of pride, wanted all the glory and wanted all of the power. And that's what happens when we think about those two words, glory and power. And that has transferred into relationships where contention is involved. Somebody wants to have more glory or somebody wants to have more power, and therefore it creates arguing, and it creates bickering, and it creates those problems. So let's look at the, if you have this talk, if you pull it up on your phones, great. If not, this is in the syllabus. And once President Benson said that once the element of competition is gone, once we take competition out of our homes, pride is gone. So if you want to know if this sin of pride is in you personally or in your family, just look at competition. If competition is there, you still have pride. If it's gone, then pride is gone. But let me also say that President Benson said pride is the universal sin. So we all have it, and quite frankly, as long as we live in mortality, we'll all be fighting it to various degrees. So if your goal is to totally eliminate it from your home, that's a little bit like saying, let's become perfect. A more realistic goal is to say we want to lessen its influence in our home. We want to lessen that impact. We want to fight the consequences of pride. And just like any principle of the gospel, if it's not taught, they don't become. So if we don't teach how to get out of pride and teach what it is so they can recognize it, just like the Holy Ghost, if you don't teach what it is so they can identify it and know how to hear it, then they can't live by it. So it's the same thing. If we don't teach what pride is and help them to identify it and teach them how to get out of it, it's awfully hard to change your nature because the natural man is full of pride. Naturally comes with pride. So some of the, as you look down here in your syllabus, President Benson taught that some of the elements of pride, so the symptoms, if you see pride, is fault-finding, gossiping, backbiting, murmuring, living beyond your means. The next one was interesting to me. Withholding gratitude and praise that might lift another. So if you hear a sacrament meeting talk that you just think is amazing, but you don't say anything, and sometimes you can't get to the person, but in today's media, you can certainly text or send a quick email or make a comment. Anything that would lift another, we all struggle in this life. We all struggle. And if we would just lift each other as the thoughts came to our head, oh, how we could minister to one another. How we could minister just by a word. So do you see the lack of doing that is one of the aspects of pride. Some people, and your children are going to fall into this category probably more than you, but they're reticent about giving a compliment to a peer, because to tell you sincerely a compliment means you're better than me. See, they're already on this comparative, and that's competition. So I can't tell you you're doing really well because that makes me look less. Or a sibling. I can't tell you that was a really great job especially if they're both involved in the same activity. If you have two piano players and they play in a recital, and one does really, really well, and one kind of bombs it, which happens, for the one who bombs it to go to the one in all sincerity and say, "Wowie, you did a great job." It's hard. So that we've got to teach that. We teach it best by emulating it. So we have to develop that. And the last one is jealousy. Jealous. We're jealous. And that creates this up and down. You're better than me or less than me. We're going to talk about that. Yes.
I've experienced that as a mother, where there are certain things or different things that I do, and I've had a friend who said, "You're a better mom than me because you do this." And I think that just like what you were sharing is we have to emulate that ourselves, that we're not in competition with other mothers, we're in competition with ourselves. That I thought of that as I was trying to think of traditions or things like that. I'm not out there to do traditions that are going to be better than anybody else. I'm out there to do these traditions to bond my family with one another. But I was just thinking of that we need to make sure that we're not in competition with other mothers as well.
I'm so glad you said that, because that is one of the big problems we have as women, that we feel a lot of discouragement, depression, shame was a word somebody used with me just the other day, because my traditions aren't as good, or my clothes aren't as good, or even more so, and primarily with mothers, my children aren't as good. So as you see some children leaving and serving wonderful missions, and your child decides not to go on a mission, then rather than trying to understand the child and what's inside of them and what's making them tick and how can I help you, that becomes a reflection of my own worth. So I just wasn't a good mother if you don't want to go on a mission. What did I do wrong? How come I failed? What's wrong? That's not it at all. Has nothing to do with that. Well, maybe, but that's not the answer to the answer is, what can I do to help? To live out, that's getting out of competition, is to live out instead of, now, and let's just go on. The proud, the mothers, the you, the us, the proud stand more in fear of men's judgment than of God's. What will men think of me weighs heavier than what will God think of me. So what will other members of the ward think because my son or daughter didn't go on a mission? What will they think because they're not going to college? What will they think because they've left the church? That's not even the question that we should ask. It's to turn to God and say, how can I help? What can I do to help? What can I do to support this child? Not once, you see why I say, I hope you see that if you are on that side of saying, oh, I'm terrible, I'm awful, I'm no good because they left the church. Listen to what this says about, there is, however, a far more common ailment among us than pride, and that's from when you're looking from pride as looking down on people. And he's saying there's a more common ailment, and that is pride from the bottom looking up. So when we're on the bottom looking up at all these people who are successful, and our kids have left the church, and we are awful and terrible and horrible, that's still part of pride. It is still part of this element of pride. And the reason why Satan is so anxious to use that is because it stops your forward progress and your ability to help those who are stuck and struggling. Because you are down now in the bottom with them. And where the Lord wants to use you to lift them, to help them, to walk beside them, to sustain them, If you are feeling like such a failure that you become immobile, then he gets 2 rather than 1. So pride, this is something that we really need to look at, partly to see if it's in our families, but mostly to see if it's in us. Because if it's in us, we got to change us so that we can change our families. So let's go on. Let's see, we read that one. Oh, this one is really good. Pride is a sin that can readily be seen in others, but rarely admitted in ourselves. So that is a very interesting aspect of pride. You can see it in other people, but we rarely see it in ourselves. And so the question is, we need to pray that the Lord will show us how it's manifest. Not if it's manifest in ourselves. Present tense says universal. It's there. So how is it manifest in me? And then what can I do to get it out of me? Selfishness is one of the core elements of pride. And selfishness is, how does everything affect me? And I'm sure that none of you have that. When you're exhausted at night and somebody wants something, have you ever just felt like saying, can't you get it yourself? Do you know what I've done all day? You know, I've done this and this and this and this and this, and can't you just do that yourself? Do you see where's our focus? It's me. In marriage, you mean that I have to do everything? I have to take out the garbage? I have to pick up after the dog? I have to do this? What do you guys do? That's pride. That's that self-focused. Selfishness becomes the core of pride and contentions. Because when we start feeling that way, then what do? We contend with our children or our spouses, or mentally contend with people in the ward or in our families, because you should have called me. That was your job. You know, you should have called me. How come you never call me? How come some of us mothers who are empty nesters will say, how come our kids never call us? How come they never call? Well, do you know what? The phones work both ways. If that's my problem, I need to call them. I need to text them. But we get so hung up on making it someone else's fault when we need to take control of ourselves and take care of it. This is the last part I want to talk about, pride. The proud depend on the world to tell them whether they have value or not. And I would say mothers too frequently depend on their children and how their children turn out to tell them whether or not they're a valuable parent. So if my children turn out well, I've done a good job in parenting. If my children don't turn out well, then I'm a lousy parent. That philosophy negates agency. You can do everything right in parenting and have children choose, particularly in this day, when Satan is so subtle, a different path. The Lord had that. Lehi had that. I mean, there's examples all through the scriptures of amazing parents whose children have gone awry. So that is not, your criteria is, am I doing all that I know I should be doing as a parent? And now, in saying that, let me also put in a clause. Because some of you already will make, that statement will make you feel guilty. I know I should be doing this. I know I should be doing this, but I'm not doing it 100%. I know I should be doing this. And knowing what to do is a star to guide you, not a stick to beat you. And so that helps you. Your knowledge in parenting, in what you should do as a parent, is like a train going down a railroad track at night. So if you've ever seen a train at night, they have a great big light on the front of the engine, and it lights the track in front of them. So as you start at the beginning of your family, you have this light. Now the train is in motion, And as it moves, the light is always ahead of the train. So when you started, your train is here, your light's here, and if you lived everything you knew, you would be up to here, but at that point your light's out here. So do you see you can never catch up to your light? It's like a train. It's because as you show the Lord that you appreciate the knowledge you have and you're acting upon it, He will give you more light and knowledge. So you will continue to grow and grow and grow and grow. So you're always going to know more than you do. Always. But if you're improving, if that track is moving forward, you are doing well. You're good. That's what the Lord wants. So you're moving this family forward. But if you're saying, but I'm not there, we're just not doing everything, that's because your light's extending. Just keep moving in that direction. And don't belittle yourself, because then you're letting Satan in. So don't let him in. C.S. Lewis, who I love. I am an advocate of C.S. Lewis. He said in his book, Mere Christianity, pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having more than the next man. It's the comparison that makes you proud, the pleasure of being above the rest. Once the element of competition is gone, pride is gone. So what we want to do, spiritually speaking, in our home, is to take competition out. Because once competition is gone, pride is gone. So the question then is, how do we take competition out of our families? If we're putting them in competition, not even knowing it, unconsciously, how do we take them out of competition? And the answer is by focusing on those things that create uniqueness and equality. Not sameness, but uniqueness and equality. So there's no ites. There's not the music ite and the sports ite and the video game ite and there's no ites. Everyone is unique, and in their uniqueness, they are equally valued and loved. So that's what we want to create in our homes. And that's what we want to create in us. Now, the first thing is to work on this talk, find yourself in it, and work to take yourself out. And understand that that is a lifetime journey. That's a lifetime journey. As long as we live in mortality, we're going to fight this. But we have to be willing to fight the fight.
How do we help our children see and appreciate their siblings' successes?
Okay, that's what we're going to talk about right now. I'm so glad you asked. You just put us right into that. You are great. You know me. I like a list. I'm a lister. And mainly I think I'm a lister because I have to be able to see whether or not I'm progressing. Just the desire to progress. You know, if you're on a diet, you see on the scales, it'll tell you whether or not you're progressing. Or inches. If you measure inches, you know, you'll see progression. And I have to have something that says, that I can see, that says, I am moving down the track in the right direction. That doesn't mean I'm there, but it means I'm moving down the track in the right direction. So that's what I want to give to you, are tools, keys to help you move down the track, to take competition out of your life and then out of the lives of your family. Because once competition is gone, it breeds cooperation. And that's what we want in our homes, is we want cooperation. We want it in our marriage. We want it among our children. We want it in our extended families. But with this being said, remember, you're only in control of you, and you can't take away somebody else's agency. So you do these things and walk with the Lord hand in hand in them, and there's a lot of hearts that will be changed. It doesn't mean every heart will be changed. There are a lot of parts that will be changed. Number 1, these are in the syllabus. They're on page 48. One of the keys to taking children out of competition and pride is to teach gratitude. Gratitude is the foundation of every other virtue. So if we can teach gratitude, now what's the opposite of gratitude? In our society, it's entitlement. So if we can teach gratitude, and many of you do things for your children and they didn't even appreciate it. They don't even appreciate it. They just want something else. Well, then you know that they're living in that mode of entitlement. Now, we're actually going to spend 2 hours, maybe in 2 weeks, before Thanksgiving, on teaching gratitude in your home, because I think it is critical. I think it's critical. But just as kind of a starter, this would involve things like we've already talked about, counting tender mercies every day and keeping a gratitude journal every day. Now, it's not that it's sacred to write everything down, but it's just like reading the scriptures every day or saying your prayers twice at least, more than that, a day. It's that it keeps it in your memory. It keeps it in remembrance. And so as we're teaching our children to write a gratitude journal or to keep a journal of tender mercies every day, it keeps it in their remembrance of how good Heavenly Father is to them and how good their family is to them. They focus then on what I have instead of what I have not. Entitlement comes from focusing on what I have not. Gratitude comes from focusing on, with a happy heart, a grateful heart, the things that I have. So that journaling keeps that focus.
My husband and I actually chose to do this with one another because we were bickering, and so we made the choice that each day we would have to write down something that we noticed that the other person did for us. And not only were we then focusing on what they were doing for us, but we also realized that we needed to do more for them.
Yeah. See, it just changes the thought, changes the paradigm, and it's so good. So also, teach your children before saying family prayer or even before saying the blessings on the food. Sometimes your blessings on the food get pretty rote. And so to help them to learn to pray, not just bless the food, before prayer, take a mini moment to count blessings. What are we going to thank Heavenly Father for? What blessings have we been given? What things are we truly grateful for? And this doesn't have to be, and it has to be passed, thankful for our home and our food and our clothing. It has to be passed rote. So you're teaching them to look for grateful things in your home every day or in their lives every day and to give thanks. But they don't do this unless you stop, take a moment, and help them to see that. Look for the good each day. Some have had CTR moments at the end of, either at dinner or at the end of the day. What was the best thing that happened? What was your choose the right moment? So you're changing focuses. If you have older children, I would highly recommend taking an opportunity between now and Christmas to work at the soup kitchen. It gives them, or the food bank. Soup kitchen's better. I have a son that works down at the Missionary Training Center, and I have a granddaughter who was getting ready to go on a mission, and so she asked Nathan, she says, what can I do to best prepare to go on a mission? Thinking that he would say, study, preach my gospel, and which are good things, fabulous things, don't get me wrong. But it was interesting that his answer to her was go serve at the soup kitchen. He says that helps you learn to speak to people who are outside your LDS bubble and learn to appreciate them and find out about them and get into their space and learn to be grateful for what you have, but help them feel love for where they are. And so I thought, what great counsel, what great counsel. And perhaps the most important, if you want to develop this attitude of gratitude, is to study the atonement. And I would recommend that you perhaps accept the challenge by President Nelson that was given several conferences ago about taking all of the subtitles, the 57 subtitles in the Bible dictionary, and looking them all up. And it will take you a long time, maybe a year. But you will certainly have a new appreciation for the Savior and for the atonement if you do that. Another thing would be to memorize the living Christ. Those are wonderful ways to appreciate the atonement. Number 2, create win-win experiences in your home. Instead of pitting your children against each other by saying, let's see who can get to the car first, let's see who can get their shoes on first, let's see who can do this first, create win-win so that everybody in the situation is a winner. And some of you will say, well, what does that look like? Because all you know is this pitting them against each other. So it looks like when everybody gets undressed, I'll read a story. We're going bowling. So if the family can get 200 points, then we'll go out for ice cream. So you're creating team camaraderie, a team picture rather than pitting them one against another. Use languages of love and respect. These are not just please and thank you. This is no vulgarity in your home. And being vulgar is more than just not swearing or using the Lord's name in vain. It's using any kind of phrases or words that would invite the Holy Ghost to leave. And they're crude. And I think that you kind of have a feeling for what they might be. Not even joking. Sometimes jokingly we'll say things, or we allow that kind of language in our homes in media. And we need to be very careful to protect what's inside the walls of our homes. We need to avoid sarcasm. You get sarcastic sometimes. You give your kids a sarcastic answer. And, you know, you've said something 9 times, and they still haven't done it. And then you can say, you know, what do you think I meant? Or what part of no don't you understand? You know, we get this little, and that is disrespectful. That invites the Spirit to lead. Yes?
So we just had this come up in our house actually just yesterday. My son was given an assignment to read a certain book for school that had some vulgar words in it. And so we addressed it with the teacher. And they said, well, you know, we can give him another book to read, but really I don't, you know, he kind of went on for a lot of justification, etc. I just wonder if I haven't responded back to the teacher, and I'm just trying to figure out what a good option and solution would be, because we don't talk that way in our home. Our son actually brought it to our attention, so he recognized, which was a good thing. I thought that was the best thing, is he recognizes, hey, this isn't good. And they said, well, you know, the teachers feel that this is a good book, it's in the curriculum, this is a well-renowned journalist, etc., etc. Justification. So thoughts? I just wondered.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if I just told you what to do?
Have you ever had to deal with that?
Yes.
How did you handle it?
I'm not going to tell you. And the reason is every situation is so different, and every child is so different, and every teacher is so different, that there's not one answer. I mean, I handled it a certain way, but there's not one answer. And my children, as they've been parenting, my grandchildren have been faced with this a lot. But with that child, that teacher, that situation, I truly invite you and the child to pray about it together and come to a decision. And let the child be part of it. So that in prayer, you can discuss it. This becomes a real teaching opportunity. And it's not just a, here's a problem, find a solution. It's how can I use this experience to help teach them and feel how to be in the world but not of the world. So, and these challenges are going to come up more and more and more as we go through these latter days. So I just invite you to take this opportunity to truly, in depth, invite the child into the decision-making process in prayer, and then work out what you feel is good for all of you. Yeah. In using language of love and respect, this is where you encourage your children to give positives to other peers. And you give positives to their peers, and you encourage them to. That's one of the hardest things that they're going to ever do to keep them out. I mean, if they give a peer a compliment, it's like saying, you're better than me. And that's really hard for them to learn to do. That other people can do good things, but we're not in competition, and so nobody's better or less. It's just that they did something really good, and that's awesome. And we need to teach our children to give those kinds of words of encouragement and then help them to feel that that doesn't devalue them. So that's in the process of teaching them how to do it. And you need to set the example. Number 4, prayer. And this is to take children out of pride and out of competition. The bottom line is to teach them how to learn to live out. That's the key. It's instead of living in, it's learning to live out. And so as you kneel in prayer, it's to teach them to pray out. So you'll talk about the family and what are the needs of the family. Does somebody have a test? Is somebody running a track meet? Is somebody got a basketball game? Is somebody, got something else that they're doing that day that they may need special help with? We need to make it safe. We don't make it safe in our homes to talk about these serious things, these I might fail things. We only want to talk about successes. So we need to make it safe to talk about working together. And if we fail, it's okay because it's just an opportunity to get up again. And how can I help you get up? And what can I do for you? This is the thinking out part. And we have to make it safe by doing it. And in the doing, not allowing each other to put each other down. So if you have one child that just happens to be fabulous in spelling and has got 100% in spelling all the time, you may have another child that's the hardest thing in the whole wide world for them. And your good speller very easily can say demeaning things. And you have to not allow that. You have to get them so that the good one helps the weaker one, not on an attitude of I'm better than you, but let me help you because this is one area that I'm good at. And you have other areas that you're good at. Let's work together. Our families need to come on this plane, that we're walking together down the road of life, not this plane of I'm better than you. It's this plane. And we have to help them do that. To serve each other. We have to teach them how to learn to love, to serve each other, to do things for each other. This involves, I remember long time ago, when I still had, I think I probably had 3 or 4 in diapers. But I had a friend who had children, then had a big gap, and then had a baby. And we were talking one day, and she was up at our house, and my baby needed a diaper change, and I just called one of my older daughters, and I said, hey, could you take care of the baby? And they just went and did it. And this lady said, I can't believe that you asked your daughter to do that. And I said, why? And she said, well, I would never ask my oldest children to do that because, I had the baby. They didn't ask for the baby. I had the baby. So it's my job to take care of the baby's needs. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. In a family, we all work together for the well-being of the family. This is our family baby. It's not my baby. It's our family. This is part of our family. And we learn to take care of the needs of our family. And that's what we do. We love one another and we care for one another. Right now, I've got a daughter down in San Diego who's moving here to Idaho and is selling her house. And 2 weeks ago, one of my daughters went down to help her, and then she came back for a week, and now she's back down there with 2 of my sons. That's what we do. We help each other. And it's not that we just give each other money so they can go buy somebody to do it. It's we give ourselves. We help each other. That's what families do. Teach your children to write thank you notes. And have them actually get a piece of paper and write thank you notes. As women, we have a hard time receiving help. Learn to receive help graciously because you're teaching your children something. In gratitude, your gift to the giver is a grateful heart. Teach your children that. We sometimes want to pay them back. And if you brought me cookies, I need to bring you cookies. And if you did that for me, then I need to do that for you. Learn that your gift back is a grateful heart. And teach that to your children. It's, you'll have surgery on your foot or something, and the Relief Society will come in and say, can I help you? You say, oh, no, we got it covered. You're missing an opportunity to teach your children gratitude. Now remember, it's how you accept it. You don't want them to say, sure, take care of my family for the next 3 months. I feel really good about that. It's being grateful, but teach your children to be grateful for help. Yes?
We found that one of the things that I had a friend that used to do all of my canning. I didn't know how to do canning every fall, and I always felt so guilty that she did all of the work for me. Like I'd leave and then I'd come back the next day and she would have done it without, I said, well, wait, I'll come back tomorrow. And she's like, no. She said, I have older kids. And, she being a different season in life than I was with little tiny kids and kids running around in diapers said, pay it forward. She said, that's what service is about. And she goes, you will never be able to do for me what I've done for you. But she said, someone's going to come along in your life when you're in a different season than them that you can help them. When I do things for my friends that they're uncomfortable or they're awkward, and I take, new moms dinners and things like that, they're like, oh, how can I ever repay you? I said, I always remind them, you know what? I don't need you to repay me. Your repayment for me is to do this when you can for someone else. And I think that softens the blow, for people. It makes it easier for them to accept help, knowing that someday they can do it for someone else.
I love that. The thing about it is, bottom line is, it's the condition of the heart, both in the receiving and in the giving. It's the condition of your heart. Do you feel guilty? You should feel gratitude. So it's the condition of your heart, and that's what we're working on when we get rid of pride. So I have to share with you, this is in Tracy's family, but we're teaching children when they're little to care about each other. And in Tracy's family, when Cody, and she has the last 2 of her children are girls, and Cody he couldn't be more than about 9. And then the 2 little girls were under him, about 2 years apart. And so he was starting to play football. And so the girls all wanted to play football. And so he created this little activity that he had where they had to do certain things. It was outside in the backyard, and they had certain events that they had to do, but they were earning their puffs. And he had them with T-shirts, and then he had like stuff you put in, not batting, but just the polyester puffy filling stuff, and they could earn puffs for their T-shirts, and he was helping them be football players, and they had to earn it by doing, and he had his puff girls, and those little girls loved to wear their T-shirts with their puffs in them. That's the kind of service. You'll have an older daughter that'll want to do princess parties with little people. That's the kind of mentality that you want to see them have. And when you start seeing that, then you'll know that they're getting it. Especially when they start doing it without you telling them that they have to. Okay, number 6. Use effective PPIs. We'll talk about how to do that a little bit later, but PPIs is the avenue where you set them in competition with self, where you have them set goals and then help them understand the steps to reach those goals and what they want to do. Now, if you have children and they set a PPI and they set a goal and say the goal is, I want to learn how to quilt, and so you talk about the steps to do it, and then after a little while they say, no, I really don't want to do that. I want to do something else. To change their mind occasionally is not a bad thing. It's okay. Our interests are going to change. Then they have another goal. You have to be careful if you see a pattern in that, not an event. If you see a pattern that every time something gets hard they want to quit, that's when you will encourage them to stick with that goal all the way through to the end. And then they don't have to do it again if they don't want to. But to change their mind sometimes in the middle, that's okay. But just be sure there's not a pattern in quitting. That's when you, but PPIs are not opportunities to lecture. They're opportunities for you to learn to ask good questions and keep record of PPIs. I would go into a PPI with a notebook, and I would write down what their goals were and what they intended to do about them, and what their concerns were, what their joys were, and then the next time they come back to their second PPI, maybe in a month, you can show that you really are interested. What happened here, and how did you do this, and tell me more about this, and so that they feel like when you never follow through, it feels like you're interrogating them. But when you follow through and you show interest and you remembered and you want to continue to help, that says to them that you're really interested in them and what they're doing. So you're not interested in football, therefore you're interested in me, because I play football, but you're interested in me and whatever it is that I'm doing. This is where you set that feeling for them to be individual but uniquely important, is when you have PPIs. Now, if you happen to be following in your syllabus, I'm going to give you 4 more that aren't there. Number 7. Have family dinner regularly. I'd say nightly, but sometimes that's not possible. But have family dinner as often as possible. This should be a point that takes them out of competition, and a family dinner should be a totally safe place to have conversation, to express feelings, to express fears, to express doubts. Should be a totally safe place, and moms and dads are the ones that create that safety.
So I have a husband that works late, like most nights, so I feel bad about family dinner a lot of times, but if it's just me and the kids, is that still, I don't know, does it still feel
I love this question. I love this question because this is the way Satan gets us to feel inadequate. Remember, you are worthy if you're doing what you can do. Everybody's situation is different. So if you can do what you can do you remember in the Book of Mormon where they were talking about if you have money, give to the poor, but if you have not money, but your heart is right, you would give if you could give? It's the same thing. If you can't have, you would if you could. If his job was different, it's really more important that he's providing for the family. That's a good thing. So you still have family dinner with the ones you have, and you create that as a wonderful thing. And in your family dinner time, you're careful to create that foundation of gratitude for a dad who would work to provide for us. Rather than, well, I wish dad could be, no criticism, gratitude, so that he's there in spirit, in heart, not there physically, but you bet, absolutely. And stop blaming yourself or feeling guilty. You're doing awesome, awesome. Yes.
Well, I was gonna say, for 10 years, we've had a restaurant in the same, and either I'm working or my husband's working at night. We're always gone weekends, everything for the restaurant. So we started doing family breakfast, and we, whether the little kids were supposed to be up or the older kids were supposed to be up, we make sure everyone was up. And we do that same time that you would have family dinners. We did family breakfast together, so that we could all have a meal together.
Perfect.
And talk together, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. But you see, what I want you to get in this whole class, if you don't get anything else, it's your paradigm. It's, I can't do that. It's, how can I make this work? It's, and the Spirit will, if you're going in with the question of, how can I, the Spirit will tell you how to do it. It's exciting. It works. Maybe you'll have snacks together or lunch together. Or who knows? I love breakfast. I'd come to your breakfast. So, you know, you'll find the ways. The Spirit will, if your heart is, but Satan wants you to think you're a loser because you can't do it. Then you stop trying to make it move forward. But if it's, how can I? The Spirit will take your hand and show you how. So it's your heart. It's what's in your heart that matters. Number 8. Encourage children to seek and speak the good in others. This one with little people, this is where I like to use, if you come to tattle me, you have to tell 3 good things before I listen to what you want to say to me that's wrong. And you can't repeat. You can say whatever you want the first time, but then the next time you come to tattle, you can't repeat. So it gets to the point where they'll stop tattling. It's also a good thing to have them, you can have maybe on Sunday dinner, say, okay, we're going to go around the table, and who's ever sitting on your right, I want you to tell me one good thing that you noticed about them this week. Or, you know, help them to learn to think in the positives, to look for the positives, and to verbally acknowledge them. Now that's both in your family and siblings, and it's in friends. Number 9, I'm going to be very brief on this, and most of you won't be happy about that. And that is, use positive discipline instead of punishment. Many of you punish, trying to change behavior, to get appropriate behavior that you want, and so you punish. But you don't know the difference between punishment and positive discipline. Discipline is a teaching tool. It's not revenge for what they did wrong. It's a teaching tool. And so how do you make correcting behavior a teaching tool? We will spend 4 hours on that next semester. So that's pretty complex. Number 10, you have to teach them to not contend. You have to teach them how to have anger management. Teach them how to handle frustration. Teach them what to do when they don't get their own way. You have to teach them tools to handle their feelings other than contention. They will try to do something to get what they want. And you have to teach them tools so they'll know what to do. In this process, you have to teach them that life is not fair. Fair. That's one of their favorite words. That's not fair. That's not fair. And you can just say, you're right. It's not fair. I'm not trying to make it fair. So, you know, some of you are so tender-hearted. If Sarah gets a new sweater or a new sweatshirt, then we need to get one for John, because they're all on sale. And you know, it's a good deal. But Sarah might need one, and John doesn't need one. But when we take them and everybody gets the same, then that's entitlement. It's an expectation. You may have a child that is preschool, that takes an afternoon nap. And at 8 o'clock, when your first grader needs to go to bed, they're not ready to go to bed. And you can say, Sarah, it's 8 o'clock, it's bedtime because you'll be tired for school tomorrow. Well, Johnny's not going to bed. He's younger than I am. How come he's staying up? He took an afternoon nap and he's not tired yet. So needs are different, and they need to understand that we parent according to needs of individuals. That's what I mean. It's not all the same, but it's according to the uniqueness of each child. So, and that's just an example. I mean, don't give in to that thing about fair. I have to tell you an experience that happened with my grandchildren. It's so much easier to use them than my children. Spencer and Carson, when they were growing up, they kind of had some conflicting moments. They had a hard time. They were very different in personality, and they kind of had some hard time. And one time, they have a two-story house. Tracy heard this mega thumping upstairs, and she went up there, and they were having it out physically. Usually it was just a verbal battle, but they were after each other. And she said, we will not fight in this home. We don't do that. We will not contend. And so she called Corey, who's her brother, who lives about 2 miles away, and said, Corey, I'm bringing Spencer and Carson over. Corey had just moved into his house, and the backyard, because it had been a rental prior to that, was full of dandelions. And so she said, I want them to dig up dandelions for you, and you are not to let them in the house. If they need a drink, they can get it out of the hose. They're not to come in the house. And I don't want you to take them any treats. I don't want you to just let them dig their dandelions. And she gave each one of them a kitchen spoon and sent them into Corey's backyard. And she says, you are to stay here and dig dandelions until I come and get you. Well, they were still so mad at each other. It's your fault that we have to be here. It's your fault that we have to be here. And so they started digging dandelions at opposite ends, of the yard. And an hour passed. 2 hours passed. They wanted to go in. Corey said no. Corey called Trace and said, can I give him a popsicle? And Tracy said, no, you may not. They can have a drink out of the hot hose. And so after about that time, they weren't mad at each other anymore. Who were they mad at? Mom. But now they are really bonded against Mom. And so they dug dandelions. I think they were out there for about 4 hours digging dandelions with spoons. And when she came and got them, let me tell you, they were no longer fighting. And they never had another all-out fist fight ever again. Doesn't mean they agreed with everything as they continued to grow older, but they learned that that was not the way to resolve conflict, especially with Tracy from Mom. So they learned that that wasn't the way. So you have to teach them tools of anger management, frustration. When you're tired, what do you do? When you're hungry, what do you do? We learn to recognize these feelings and then learn how to manage them. And that helps take, even with you, when do you get mad and get short and get contentious with our families? It's when we are experiencing some of these things. So we learn those kinds of things so that we can manage contention. In 3 Nephi, chapter 11, verse 29, it says, quite forcefully, the devil is the father of contention. So it doesn't say if you contend and it's a righteous cause, then it's okay. It simply says that the devil is the father of contention. It's like a math equation, A is B and B is C and all of that. Then you could also say, if Satan is the father of contention, Satan is the father of pride. So if you get rid of contention, you eliminate pride, and thus you eliminate the influence of Satan in your home. So that's an equation. And it goes all the way through. So our goal that we can visualize is to eliminate contention. With that being said, if we can do that through these 10 steps, then we eliminate pride, which helps to take Satan out of our homes. So my challenge for you is to study that talk on pride. As you study it, what I want you to look for is you in the talk. Not your children, but you in that talk. And see, it's a universal sin. So but it also says that we see it in other people more than ourselves. So if you read that whole talk and say, man, that was a good talk, but it's just not me, maybe you better read it again. Because President Benson says we're all in that talk somewhere. And I think we are. So it's a matter of seeing where you are and then thinking about what it is and perhaps taking to conference the question, how can I overcome my part in pride so that I can teach my children to overcome pride? But the first thing is becoming cognizant of what pride looks like and how it manifests itself to you. You won't be guilty of everything in it, but you probably will see yourself in some parts, aspects of it. I just want you to know, and I testify to you, my gratitude and my belief in a living prophet, and how grateful I am that we can have conference so easily accessible, and that we can know what the Lord would have us do. And it's just like they said in last conference, the Lord's anxious, He's willing, He's eager to pour out the mysteries of heaven if we'll just prepare ourselves to receive it. So I challenge you to prepare yourself to receive the words of the living prophet and hear from his mouth what it is that the Savior wants you personally to be focused on in your home for the next 6 months. I know if we listen with a sincere heart, with real intent, He will speak to us personally. I know that that's true. I know that the Savior lives. That He's preparing us through His prophet to be able to receive Him. In conclusion, I want to share with you a story. There was a king, and he was very concerned with contention in his kingdom. And so he put out an invitation to all of the kingdom to depict peace. And there were no stipulations. He didn't care if it was a song, a sculpture, poetry, painting. There was no stipulations on what it was, but the invitation went out to the whole kingdom to depict peace. And there would be a contest. And they were to bring their entries to the palace. And so on the given day, there were lots of entries that came of all kinds of entries that were brought to the palace. And the king looked at all of them and studied all of them and thought about all of them. And finally, he narrowed it down to 2 paintings. And one painting was the picture of a mountain lake. And perhaps some of you have been to the mountains and can visualize this. But it was a mountain lake where the lake was so quiet that you could see the pine trees, the reflection in the lake. And it just looked like there was this line, and then it was this mirrored reflection of this beautiful mountainous pines, and then it was reflected, just without a ripple in the water, just beautifully calm, peaceful. The other painting was also mountainous, but it was kind of a mountain crag, and it was a torrential river, and the sky was stormy. It was dark, and it was gray, and it was stormy, and you could see the trees. You could almost feel it, because in the painting, the trees, you could almost feel the wind, and it was just turbulent, and this waterfall was coming off of this cliff, and it was just roaring. You could just feel the energy in this painting, and it seemed to be anything but peaceful. It was very turbulent and dark and stormy, and in the back of the waterfall, on the side of the painting, in the crags, there was a nest, a bird, sitting on her nest with her wings around her babies. And that was the picture that he chose for the winner of the contest. Because when all of the world is in turmoil and conflict, our role is to create a nest of safety, a place in from the world where we can bring our babies and love them and help them to feel the spirit of their Father in heaven. Testify to you as you bring your family out of contention, out of competition. That feeling, though it pervades in the world, will be spared from your nest. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.